Okay, we are live now.
Oh, we're live. Okay. Well, we're starting a little late, folks, but we might as well just dive right in. As many of you probably know, and for those who don't, this is the Santa Rita Hills Wine Alliance series of digital tastings we've been doing all through COVID. Today we have a fun tasting with Matt Dees and Ruben Solorzano from ThsHilt. They tend to a place known as Rancho Salsipuedes, which is actually broken into two vineyards, Radian and Bent Rock Vineyard on the southwestern edge of the Santa Rita Hills. Some of the most extreme farming that I've seen in California out there, very steep slopes, heavy winds, chalky soils where you can stick your leg all the way up to your knee in them. So we're going to learn about, their histories in wine and these amazing vineyards, and taste 4 different wines too. We have 2 Chardonnays, one from Radian Vineyard, one from Bent Rock Vineyard, and then 2 Pinots, one from Bent Rock and one from Radian. This is the last one of these tastings we have on the books. We've done about 24 of them since last June, and featured more than 40 producers and growers and a lot of pioneers and some newer faces, and so it's been a lot of fun. But I will say that the Wine Alliance is keeping a series going with some anniversary events to celebrate the 20th year as an AVA, and they have events lined up for April, May, and into the summer. So stay tuned for more info on those as it becomes available. Today I also have, for the first time in this series, some slides to show. So I haven't used the slide function on StreamYard yet, the service we're using, but I think it'll work. So bear with us if it doesn't. But let's dive right in. Matt Dees has been in town since 2003, 2004. He came here to start a Hanada estate in the Ballard Canyon area, which wasn't even an appellation at that point, and has grown up with that estate, and then also started ThsHilt a few years later to focus on Burgundian varieties. Ruben Solorzano, known affectionately by most as the Grape Whisperer, has been here since 1989 when he came from Mexico and started working in the vineyards right away. He actually lives on the Stoltman estate in Ballard Canyon and is a partner in Coastal Vineyard Care Associates, and is one of the main wine growers throughout Santa Barbara County. He's got his fingers in a number of different properties and is very well respected and has a great story of going from, coming over the border to, running his own, making his own wines and being a really strong businessman and all of that. So we're going to hear about these guys' stories. Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about the brands first, and then we can kind of have Ruben tell us about the landscape as you guys get into that property. And I've already poured myself some of the ThsHilt Radian Chardonnay, which sounded like what you wanted to start with. So feel free to start talking about that as well. So.
Yeah, you got it, man. It's a ton of fun to be on these because I get to see you, Kitman, which is nice. I rarely see you, and I see you, Ruben, not as much as I would like, but
couple times.
This guy's my brother from another mother, so we see each other. But it's a ton of fun. I'm really excited about it today to talk, to be able to chat with Ruben and you, Matt, about these properties because it's kind of a rare occurrence these days. It's nice. Hanada. Different story. We're not really covering that today, but suffice it to say that at Hanada we have every single grape right except for Pinot and Chard, because for all the glory of Ballard Canyon, one of the issues is that it doesn't really grow Pinot and Chard well. When we came down here in 2004, Ruben, you started at Hanada in 2003, right?
03, yeah.
Man, you're getting old.
Yeah, a little bit.
No. But when we started in 2004, we started buying Pinot and Chard because we're big Burgundy fans. I think the entirety of our vineyard team, our winery team, everyone has worked together really closely. We love drinking Burgundy back when we could afford it, I always say. But we kind of started realizing early on, tasting the wines of like Greg Brewer and Brian Babcock, the Melville wines, Lane Tanner's wines, what Bruno Alfonso was making, that this county as a whole, and Santa Rita Hills specifically, was arguably the best place in California, at the very least, to grow Chard and Pinot. And I still stick to that. And I'm now pushing the entire country, and now I'm talking worldwide because I'm a believer now. But it became really obvious that you can make world-class wines here. And so we started to experiment And I think the strength of what we do as a team is so much, based on the relationship Ruben and I have and our approach to farming, and Ruben's such a brilliant farmer. That buying fruit wasn't really our thing, but so we started buying fruit just to experiment and kind of learn what we liked about Santa Rita and what we didn't like, and what region, what aspect, what soil type. We found the wines we wanted to make. And 04, 05, 06, 07, 08, we made wines buying fruit. We made some fun wines, but wines of style. And I think we decided at a certain point that the wines we wanted to make were going to be growing from vineyards in the southwest corner of the Santa Rita Hills AVA, which was kind of closest to the ocean. It takes the brunt of that wind. The yields are naturally very low. The soil is really like that 4-mile area over there where it's pure DE, pure diatomaceous earth, that old inland sea. We kind of wanted to be around there. And the reason we wanted to be around there were a couple of reasons. While we love Burgundy, I always say this, Matt, you know this, Ruben, you know this too, but like as much as we love Burgundy, we want nothing to do with making Burgundy in California. It just seems like kind of a waste of time. But we also wanted to find a site that gave us Chardonnay with like freakish levels of acidity, which was kind of inspired a little bit by our love of Chablis, but also even like Coton Charlemagne and Pouligny, Montrachet, things like that. But we wanted to make it with California fruit. And with Pinot, we wanted to find a site that gave us like the darkness, the richness, the kind of purity of fruit you get from California, but also kind of I call it the hint of corruption, the things about Pinot that kind of catch your attention and keep you. So in 08, we started farming a little bit of Sanford Benedict, and we caught our eyes were caught on this little property over here, this Rancho Salsipuedes. And fast forward, and farming S&B from like 08 to 14, we finally bought this property, Rancho Salsipuedes, in 14. We finally had a home, and the HILT kind of took off from there, I'd say.
So you can see my screen as I'm sharing it, basically, if I do so.
Yes.
So you see it now?
No.
No.
We see your handsome smile, my friend.
Let's see. Share. Here we go. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. So here we are. You see my mouse too?
You're amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So southwest corner here. I mean, the Appalachian end. You see this line right here? You're actually, some of it pokes out. Looks like.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about that.
Yeah. and then you just built your estate winery right about here, right?
Yeah. So it's actually 3 vineyards. It's 2 vineyards within the AVA. It's Bent Rock and Radiant, which are, even though they're a stone's throw from each other, are like polar opposites. And then there's a little tiny range called Puerto del Mar that's so far off the AVA. It's actually like in Lompoc proper almost. And that's where we decided to build our property, our kind of our brain center, where we have all of our winery, our production facilities all there.
And you can see this from Santa Rosa Road. If you're driving into Lompoc, you can see the little vineyard, and you can see the winery as well. So here's a map of the vineyard. And maybe we'll cut to Ruben just really quickly. Ruben, when you went out here, it sounds like you guys had maybe looked at it before, but this, I mean, as virgin land, this must have looked pretty crazy.
Yeah, so what I love about these properties is the diversity of the soils is incredible, from pretty much block to block, how much different the fruit, how much different the vines can react to the different conditions. Also, when I work in the Santa Rita Hills, farming other vineyards, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, it tells me that this corner where the Salsipuedes property is the best spot to grow Pinot and Chardonnay, because the weather, the soil, and also the hills that we have in these properties, they amazing. They created more energy for me, more like really like it shows in the wines, like the energy that we have, the mineral that we get in these wines, and also the soil test. Like you can get you can test in the wines, you can test in the soil when you test in the wines, and it's only coming from these properties. The way they plant into the vineyard is very special because they went really high density, and I think that's what really helps to get the intensity that we get into the wines. And by tweak the farming every year, that Matt and I talking about 100 times every day, we change our mentality, our field workers too. Like we clearly one of the positive soils, these properties here, to farming the best wine possible. Like we don't really talking about the grapes. We're talking about how we can do a work to make a better wine. And that, for me, like what we see in these properties, it's really hard to see in other properties in the Santa Rita Hills. It's very, very special spot. And soils, weather, the conditions that there is not easy, which is that make it more intense for the vines. The vines, it's not only me that working hard or Matt, it's the vines working more hard than we are. They really have hard light there, and it shows in the fruit and the wines.
I remember going out there with you guys one time, and I think I was about to go to Colorado or something like that to go skiing, and the whole place reminded me of a ski resort, Radiant particularly, because you go out there and there's this huge bowl, and there's all these different aspects of it. I mean, the soils are interesting, and I remember we went to the top, and I took a picture. I think we published a picture of Matt sticking his leg in the diatomaceous earth, going all the way down to like his thigh, basically. And the soils are crazy, but also the aspects are crazy, right? It's not just all facing one way. They're all kind of like all around looking at every which way. And so I imagine that gives you, as a winemaker, Matt, plenty of ability to choose different grapes, different blocks for different styles of wine.
Yeah, it gives us material to study for a lifetime or 2 or 3. I mean, it's, we took it over and it was 60 blocks, whatever it is, right? Between Bent Rock, Radiant, and Puerto del Mar, it was subdivided into 60 blocks. And we're learning quickly that those 60 blocks really equate to about somewhere between 10 and 14 vineyards that we think of. So it really is 3 vineyards, but it's actually 14 at least, as far as similar soil types, aspect, rooting depth, climate, the wind. I mean, Radiant's like a wind farm. It's a joke. It's even on a calm day, it's kind of like Titanic. You can like stand on top of the slope and kind of fly. It's like I've never seen anything like that. It's a ranch that actually, remember, who was it? Chris King, I think, was talking about in the early days that he saw one day from Domingue de la Côte, he saw that one day the leaves blew off.
Yeah.
Block 31. If you know anything about grapevines or any living tissue on a plant, to have it ripped off by wind.
Yeah.
We like to say we grow in the margins, and this is kind of just right outside the margins. This is so extreme, at least for Radiant, that it presents challenges I never thought we would encounter as far as vineyard land. It's like it would be hard to farm anything on this property. It would be hard to grow grass on this property, but we grow vines successfully.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there stuff you do in the vineyard, Ruben, to strengthen vines? I mean, is there a technique you can use to make sure the wind doesn't blow the leaves off? I mean, what can you do?
Yeah. So the other thing, cry sometimes, because that's all we can do it. But that's when Matt and I have been working very close together, and we use the techniques. Like we have a year when we grow the weeds in the middle of the rows to protect the vines from the weed. We also, by learn quicker, I think the vines getting more strong every year. They know on the condition they are, and they getting more strong. So we switch a lot of the blocks to a spurt pruning. So they got, instead of get one shoot in the same spot, they got 2 shoots. So they help each other to protect a little bit from the wind. And the really bad spot, we use a shade lab. But most of it is like we want the tree in these vines to be successful by itself. This is when we take a trip to Burgundy, we learn this thing from those guys there. They said, we want to make the vines working for us. We're not working for the vines. And I think little by little, we make these vines more strong and more strong. So every year, it looks better. I walked Radiant this morning, and I'm so happy to see the vines look so amazing this year. And the conditions been really bad. The vines still strong. They know what they get it.
And these are not small vineyards either. Like this is not like a little backyard plot. I mean, these are large vineyards that you're having to, treat with kid gloves basically, and all these different techniques. I mean, Matt, how big what is the acreage on these?
So Radiant and Bent Rock are both about 95 acres, roughly. Puerto de Mar is little. It's like 5 acres now. But what's really interesting, I mean, Ruben, we talked about this a lot. When we took over the property, it had been planted by other people. It had been developed by other people, cared for by other people who did a hell of a job. But when we took over, it was so funny, man. We decided to stop herbicides, right? Like that's been something that Ruben and I have really, everywhere we've been, we always remove herbicides because it just, dead soil is a waste of space. Like what's the point of growing a vine in dead soil? So that interface is so important for life, the life of the vine, the vitality of the vine. So we switched. They've been spraying a little bit of Roundup, pre-emergent herbicide on the property. And I mean, I went to school to study soil science, and you're kind of taught that to change the functioning of a soil, to change the life in a soil is like a millennium, right? Like you're dealing with like thousands of years to rebuild a dead soil. Remember when we came in, we used a Clemens knife instead of pre-emergent herbicides. And I mean, it was like we started in 15 really farming the property. And it wasn't only like pretty quick, it was instant. Those vines, all of a sudden with that returning of the microorganisms in the soil and the life of the soil, that force, it was ridiculous. And we changed in one silly, I mean, not silly, but simple decision. We changed, I think, the future of that ranch. It was the biggest thing. And the vines grow in such a different manner now. And I'm a skeptical jerk, and I never thought in a million years that would happen. And I have to say, like within a year, it was a 90-degree turn almost. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. Little decisions can go a long way in a vineyard like this. It just needed some love and some intent and some thoughtful approach, I think.
Right. Tell us about this first wine, Matt. This is the Radiant Chardonnay 2018. I'll pull up the slide again because there's a cool slide that I like of the, like, I think you haven't broken down into Lou Dietz of the Radiant ranch. Let me see if I can figure this out real quick.
I only got one bottle, guys, but the big one.
Yes. You open a Magnum? Is that a Magnum?
They bring the bottle. They bring these big. Drink all of it.
We'll get you another one, man. I'll have Drew sign it for you. But
so you see this now? Are you seeing what I'm seeing?
Your beautiful face, yes.
No, the map. It's not working?
No, not yet. It's Sam's crazy pre-Soviet era.
Oh yeah. The hell. Anyway, I'm pulling it up. So you can keep talking and I will figure it out. Yeah,
sure thing. So I think, I mean, Ruben and men step in obviously, but I think when we bought the property, we had these incredible producers who have been producing wine off it for we bought it in 14. Some people, the Dragonette crew, Justin Willett from Tyler, Ken Brown, Brian Babcock, to name a few, have been buying fruit since like 08, 09, or I guess it was 9 or 10 was the first year they would have been fruit. And we kind of knew from tasting their wines and following their wines that the big kind of blockbuster wines off these properties appeared to be Bent Rock Chardonnay and Radiant Pinot, right? There wasn't a whole lot of thought given to or space, retail space or critic reviews given to Radiant Chard or Bent Rock Pinot, right? It was really those other two. And we found out really quickly that maybe we were missing something. Radiant Chardonnay comes from what we call the landslide blocks. They are the farthest west. They are the most extreme, the most windblown. We're lucky to get 2 tons an acre, even at really tight spacing, well over 2,000 vines per acre. And honestly, I say this all the time, and people think I'm joking, but I can remember moments of sitting with like Drew and Carrie and Nicholas and Beto and Jose and like tasting those wines, the Radiant Shards, and actually having concern not only that the world wasn't ready for a wine with that much acid, but that we might actually put it in bottle and it would explode in bottle, like melt the glass. Because it's not like we try to make really low alcohol wines. We pick when we think the fruit is right, but because that's basically like it's like a windbreak, that block. It takes the full brunt of Santa Rita Hills. I mean, we've bottled the Santa Rita or the Radiant Shard at like 3.1 pH and like 9 or 10 grams of acid. And it sees neutral oak and stainless because we want to kind of let it express itself because we're afraid of it. We're terrified of it. But I love the electricity. I love the vibrancy. And, you know, I think Matt, we spoke about this, but I'm not going to argue that there's, at least not on a live thing, that there's a grape that's better, that there's like a superior and an inferior grape in Santa Rita Hills. We'll do that offline over a lot of beers. But the one thing I will say about Chardonnay is that if you taste the Radiant, which is the most extreme southwest corner, I mean, it's ludicrous that it even grows. And then you taste something like, let's say, Pence, for example, which is the polar opposite, right? It's the extreme northwest corner of the AVA. It's like in almost in Buellton. That's a massive, that's like a morning drive. It's a long way, right? They're both identifiably Santa Rita Hills. They have green citrus, they have electricity, they have sea salt, they have all those things that we love about it. And that's just deserves some thought. I think if there's a grape that defines the Santa Rita Hills, it might very well be a white grape called Chardonnay. Don't quote me.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Not saying it's the best, but it's the grape that maybe in the future defines it because, boy, there's a taste to Santa Rita that you can pick up regardless of where you are on that AVA. 20 miles of like crazy distances, you can find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hear that. I mean, Ruben, I've heard that from other winemakers too, that are saying, you know, they love their Pinots and all that, but they think that, you know, you fast forward 100 years, Chardonnay might be the grape that, you know, the region is known for. I mean, do you see more interest, Ruben, on some of the other vineyards you work with as well, as far as Chardonnay goes?
Yeah, for sure. For sure, we see that, you know, it's more room for Chardonnay, and because we believe it, and you know, acid wines, we believe it. The acid is gonna make the wines last longer in the barrel, and it shows the best impression of the soil at the different size. So yeah, I think that's what we, you know, make it. Everybody move to the Chardonnay, and they probably move, you know, little bit more. We hear from people that even now from the people from North, they come in here and they very interested in the Chardonnay from Santa Rita Hills.
Great. Tell me about the Bent Rock. Let's move to the next wine. Do you have a magnum of that too, Ruben?
Yeah, only magnums for me.
You're going to be busy.
Yeah. Imagine the 6 liter of Bent Rock Chardonnay, like an 18 Bent Rock Chard. Oh, yeah. I mean, Ruben, I think it's, by the way, just to be a nerd, can I be a nerd? Because there's probably some people listening who are like soil dorks like me. Our friend Jessica, we work with, sent me this teeny tiny book, Ruben. I'm going to show you. It's a soil study from 1919 of the fossils that the Stanford University Geology Department found in the diatomaceous earth of Lompoc. And right, if your interest isn't piqued, you're missing something. And it was the most amazing book. And it said that the DE, the pure amorphous, like crazy chalky DE, is 4 miles by 4 miles. So it goes from sea light to radian, and from like the peak of radian all the way to Domaine de la Côte, like up there, right? That's kind of 4 miles by 4 miles as you run it. It's the craziest book. Anyways, offline chat for a nerdy night with beers, but it was the most amazing thing. But radian, it's important to note, is that like chalky moon dust. It's diatomaceous earth. It's ancient like 5 million year old silica algae cells, basically. And when you go from that to bent rock. You can literally throw a rock from radian to bent rock. But what happens when you go from radian to bent rock is you lower elevation. You go from about 1,000 feet at its peak, and bent rock for the most part is like 300 to 550 feet. So you're totally protected. You're further east, so the wind doesn't hit it. The soil is very different. There's not as much madness like this. That was radian, that pure chalky DE.
This is a fossil too. I don't know if it's the one they were talking about, but there's some fossils from radian as well, I think.
They're all herring. Lovely, right? And that's a pipefish. Yeah, it's super cool. Like it's full of whale bones and shark teeth and herring, which is maybe not as exciting as whales or sharks. But
so then going to bent rock, it's different, right?
Yeah, when you get to bent rock, it's totally different. You've kind of moved out just outside of that ancient inland sea. You're lower, like I was saying, 300 to 500 feet. You're warmer, and the soils are more profound in the sense they're deeper and more complex. And to me, what you get is you don't have the extremes of radian. You have these like bent rocks, right? Everything's kind of these plateaus and lovely hills. It's easier to farm, and the wines tend to hang out. And the Chardonnay to me gets stone fruit, where radian is like citrus zest and just laser beam. Bent rock gets a core of fruit. It has more of a nucleus of fruit. In the blend between bent rock and radian, bent rock is always that nucleus, where radian is an electron flowing around it. They're kind of golden and exotic and wonderful. And again, we've never bottled a bent rock, I think, above 3.2 and probably under 8.5 grams. So they're not lacking for acid. I think bent rock deserves its reputation. I think it's one of the finest Chardonnay sites in the United States.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, it's extremely racy and it has all that mineral component, but it is a little bit more opulent than the radian for sure. There's a little more roundness to it.
Yeah.
And does it get any more oak or anything, or no?
Yeah, it could gobble up oak if we wanted. We tend to use 30 to 40%, and it goes through ML because it can, to be honest, because bacteria can live in that wine without exploding from osmotic pressure. Basically, it's crazy. You can get that through ML if you really try, and we get about 30 to 40% of those barrels through ML. Different style, and again, you could throw a rock from one to the other. It's a piece of cake, and they couldn't be more different. I mean, in farming as well, Ruben, it's a different world. I mean, between those.
Yeah.
You get higher yields at bent rock. You are able to deal with the wind.
What was that little sliver of Syrah I saw on the vineyard map?
How about the Riesling out there? Yeah, Ruben and I are like, oh man, of all the conversations I have on a daily basis, my most exciting are the ones when Ruben and I talk about quasi-stupid ideas about what we should grow. We've had some awesome ones. As of right now, like within the last 2 weeks, we've put Pico Leet in the ground, not at ThsHilt, but at Honada. We put Petit Montsant, we put Assyrtiko and Exino Mavro, Limnio and Limniona. But
what's the first one you said? Pico. I don't know that one. I know the other one.
It's a northern Italian. They use it like a straw wine. It's a dessert wine.
Okay.
Just you watch. Pico Leet's going to take over the world, 1 hectare at a time. But Ruben and I, we put Syrah out in the Saturn block, this block that's the farthest east we have, and to say it thrived would be an understatement. And then Ruben and I talked about putting it on the polar opposite. So we put it on the farthest west parcel at Radian, and it thrives. And now we're starting to plant Riesling kind of everywhere we can. And the only other grapes I can think of are Chenin Blanc would be fun, and so would Nerello Mascalese, but that's kind of where we haven't done those yet. Ruben, what else should we plant at ThsHilt?
Don't get me started.
All cap front.
Yeah.
And have you made the Syrah yet?
Oh God, yeah. I always talk about this, that the joy of this industry is that you get the opportunity and blessing to wake up every day and realize you know less today than you knew yesterday. Like every day you're just bombarded with all these amazing, mind-blowing realities. And Ruben and I'm not going to throw you under the bus, Ruben, because you are a responsible and brilliant individual. The first year we had fruit in 18, I forgot we had fruit in our Syrah, like spaced it, and brought in all the rest of our fruit. And Ruben called. He's like, we still have those 2 rows of Syrah, and we brought it in, and it looked like, I mean, spaghetti and meatball. It just looked awful. It was like rotten and full of bunch rot and penicillium mold and aspergillus and just awful things like fruit fly larvae. And we brought it in, and I didn't want to put it. It was so filthy. We didn't even want to put it on our equipment. So we dumped it into a bin, and we stomped it, and it started to ferment. The VA went through the roof, and 100% whole cluster. It tasted awful. The whole thing was pink and never got color. And then we pressed it, and we squeezed it really hard to try to get a full barrel because I just didn't want to mess with it. And we got it, and we finally put it in a barrel. It's the best Syrah we've ever made. To be honest, I mean, Ruben, you've had it. I think the 18 ThsHilt Syrah
is amazing. Yeah,
just like we meant to make it. So now we leave it out until it rots, and we forget about it, and we press it, the bajingus out of it. No, but the potential for Syrah is, I mean, look what Melville's doing. Look what Manfred's doing. Look what, man, there's a lot of room for Syrah love out there.
So let's talk Pinot, and I guess we want to start with the Bent Rock Pinot. So we're going to go in kind of reverse direction. You were saying that Bent Rock was never known for Pinot, but you clearly have found some special spots for it. I mean, there's a lot of Pinot out there, clearly. So what are you finding with the Pinot at Bent Rock?
I mean, from a farming standpoint, Ruben, what do you think, man? It's easier to farm there for sure, more stable.
It's easy to farm in. I think what make it the big difference from the Pinot is we in Bent Rock we able to get like better size clusters. We get good set there, so the clusters are real Pinot. They small, they tight, but the berries are a little tight. So where the difference in ingredient, we get the same clusters, but when filled berries. But I think that's what I see the difference. And also, when now we've been grafted some neo clones in Bent Rock at Pinot Noir, and I think those are make a difference. They really fits in that soil, in that weather condition. The 2 neo clones that we do in Black Forest, like for me, it's like it shows the we in the right track to find the right space, the right the right clone, the right rootstock, the everything that in Burgundy they figured out 200 years ago. But is for me try these new clones is we elevating the quality of the wine, and we also find out that some of those clones they don't fit there too. Like we see that we think it's gonna fit there, and they don't belong to there. But this is the only way that we can see it if you try different things and see what's gonna be the best there. And it's incredible when I talking to other people and say like we grab half an acre of this clone, half an acre of this clone. Say like, why you guys do it now? You got 100 acres. Why not grab 20 acres? Say, oh, we don't know. We don't know what's gonna be best. So I tried these little things and really not working hard to make those wines separate. And it's all started. It's about to know what will be the best there.
What general percentage of the grapes do you sell from these vineyards? I don't know the best way to answer that for you guys, but is there a general percentage? You sell half of them? You sell 75%?
We sell over half. And that was always the plan, right? We have wonderful partners. Luckily, a lot of them are local, like incredibly passionate, brilliant winemakers. And we also sell fruit to some folks up north as well, some incredible winemakers up there. And we've kind of cherry picked. We started really small, and then I was like a kid in a candy store with Ruben, man. We were like, how about we keep this and this and this, like at a map? It was like grabbing all these things. And every year we're slowly kind of honing in on what we love, what blocks we love. And at the same time at Bent Rock, we're slowly grafting Pinot that we don't love over to Chardonnay, slowly and slowly, so that eventually I think, Bent Rock, the face of it will change a little bit into maybe, a majority of Chard one day. We'll see. And like Ruben was saying, playing with clones, because like Dijon clones have such a bad name, which is so funny to me, because clone is less than, less than a quarter of the story, right? It depends on what clones you're growing on, what soils and what environment. And Dijon clones for us, when we moved in, I was so idealistic. I was like 113, 114, 115, 667, 777, and 828, garbage, right? Because that was, I don't know, that was kind of the thought of the time. And it's funny.
You just like the California Heritage clones? I mean, that was what you're.
That was kind of the voodoo that was going around. Everyone was drinking that Kool-Aid, right? And there's a reason. I get that. If you're in a really high yielding, low stress set area, grow the heritage clones, because they're going to moderate their yields naturally, and you're not going to mess around with thinning and all this stuff. But in a vineyard like the one we're farming and we own, like at Radium, forget that jazz. Like if we put in, Calera Pinot on that wind-blown ice-cold block, we wouldn't be talking in tons per acre. We'd be talking in grapes per, like 8 grapes per acre. Like we got 8 grapes an acre in that block, right? Whereas if we plant the Dijon clones, they act like what people love about the heritage clones. They're low yielding, they're intense, they're fresh. It's actually, I realize now that I was pretty dumb when I assumed that they would perform poorly. If we had gone my direction, I'd probably be living some other country, drinking a beer on the beach right now out of a job, because we'd get like a quarter ton an acre, out of 200 acres, we'd be farming, 50 tons. It'd be a mess. But those clones that we have in the margins are perfect. And for Bent Rock, something I love about that wine is that I get a note. It's latent in those soils and in the roots relationship with the soil and the foliage, like the relationship with the atmosphere. Something about the sunshine, something about the cooling and the elevation, all the things that make terroir so infinitely confusing. Something in there creates this flavor profile that I've never seen anywhere else. It's blood orange, and it's a really weird thing. And it's a very specific dark red citrus. And I don't know if we've talked about it, but I'm a pretty skeptical single vineyard guy here in California. It's not my thing. I don't necessarily love bottling single vineyards off really young, shallow-rooted vineyards, because we don't know what they're supposed to taste like, and I'm not sure it does anybody a service. So we bought the properties, and even from that point, from like 14, 15, 16, 17, we didn't bottle really single vineyards. We had to make sure that we had what we thought, that it was as good as we thought it was, and it was actually proved to be far better than we thought. And we finally sat down and started tasting, and my team and I have this sniff test, which is to do a single vineyard wine, it has to be singular and have typicity and specificity, right? Like you have to be able to sit down and be like, oh my God, that smells like Bent Rock, or that tastes like Bent Rock, or that finish is reminiscent of Bent Rock. And so we'd set 20 wines up, and you had to be able to go through and say Bent Rock, Radium, Bent Rock, Bent Rock, Radium, Radium, Bent Rock, Bent Rock, Bent Rock, Ringer from Burgundy, not ours, right? And that was step one, but that wasn't even the most important step for me, because there's a lot of wines that are interesting, but wines about pleasure. Interesting wines that aren't pleasurable don't interest me at all. So what's the point? So we had to be able to do that and then put those wines together from a single vineyard and make something that was delicious and balanced and complete. In 17 it started, 18 is where it took off, and now I'm a believer. And I push hard to bottle more single vineyard every year, because they're really good. And I think finally the consumer out there, I believe, can taste and say, yeah, shit, that's Bent Rock. That's what I expect. That's what I want. That's why I bought it to pair with this food from this vintage.
Yeah, no, I get that blood orange thing quite a bit now that you mention it, especially like with the rind too, not just the juice, but the whole package there.
Isn't that weird? I can't think of another vineyard that really, the other one that has it a little bit is Rancho La Viña, which is actually right there.
Same level.
Yeah. It's something about that little piece right there that's very specific, and I've just never seen it like a specific fruit that shows up in a wine.
So how many wines does the Hilt make right now?
7,000. We have, our two main wines are our estate Pinot and our estate Chard, which is
Rancho mix, basically.
Yeah, it's the yin and yang of Radiant and Benrock. It's my favorite wine we make, and the Chard and the Pinot, because I like blending for complexity and completeness and balance, etc. We do the single vineyards times 6, so we also have PDM, Pinot, and Chard. We do a bunch of little, like, kind of almost like Lou D little wines, little like specific. Like, we're taking the magnifying glass out now, and we're like zooming way in beyond single vineyards. We're now looking at little parcels within the complex. And so we do a couple of those. And then we're really starting to focus on our sparkling program. So we're doing an estate sparkling, which gets 3 years in tirage. And now we're starting to do a Solera system sparkling. We do a pet nat. You get the idea. 7,000 comes pretty quick.
Do you still do like the Vanguard and the other ones like that, or? We do
the wines of style instead of wines of place, but now they're very small. We do 50 cases to 100 cases a year, because now we're so focused on our home that we don't need to. It's good to have them around because that's where we come from, but where we're going is our wines of place,
right?
Because we happen to be shepherds of a phenomenal couple acres.
Great. Let's talk about the Radiant Pinot Noir.
Hey, Ruben, is there any vineyard in the world that has made you lose more sleep than Radiant?
No. Radiant is the one to do it, yeah.
If Radiant was a person, would you like him or her?
Person that what?
If Radiant was actually a person, would you like that person? I don't think I would, by the way.
No. I would like it, but probably far away from me.
I wouldn't like Radiant at all.
Yeah.
As a person. I want nothing to do with that ranch as a person.
I mean, has the farming you guys have been able to do there and the wines you're making, I mean, does it pencil out at least? I mean, are you been able to make it a successful ranch when it comes to?
We are. And I joking about that. I lose the sleep when Radiant. Yeah, I lose the sleep on Radiant. But also every year, making me sleep more when I see the fruit, when I see the fruit that coming from those hills. And yes, it's hard, it's pretty scary vineyard, but what we grow there, we cannot grow anywhere. It's very special. It's not easy, but also make it more interesting for me, because I know the wine is gonna make it from there. In the end, that's what really make yours, wake up every day and go and beat up Radiant, because we do it. And we do it every year. Like, yeah, it's amazing.
It's almost like, Ruben, like, a lot of vineyards, the relationship that you and I have with different vineyards is almost like a dance. Like with Jonata, it's like a very regimented dance. Like we know Jonata, and we figured out what we're going to do, and now it's time to do this. And we've kind of figured out a large portion of what we do with Jonata. And at Benrock is kind of a dance. At Radiant, it's just a full-on brawl. It's like a fight. Yeah. It's not even dance. It's like I mean, we kind of joke, but it doesn't make anything easy. It drags its feet. It puts itself in dangerous position. Like you don't get fruit at all in some blocks. But you're right, Ruben. It produces the finest Pinot of all. I think the pinnacle of where Radiant can go is it's from that. The grapevines want to, more than anything, be biologically successful. That's what plants and animals do, right? They want to reproduce, and they want to protect their grapes. And when the diatomaceous earth and the wind makes the grapes this big to begin with, then the mother vine comes in and she's like, well, now the wind is blowing. Now I'm going to protect my grapes by making a skin that's that thick, right, on a berry that's this big.
Yeah.
And we're going to make more seeds, and we're going to make everything more tannic and dark and big and intense and concentrated. And those wines are freakish. They go like they're the opposite of the red kind of blood orange bent rock. They go to black pepper, black cherry. That's a normal block 62A cluster.
That's the full cluster.
And that's not Andre the Giant's hand. That's my like kind of normal hand. But
I mean, even the shard is like silly almost.
That's 31. Yeah.
31.
So you can tell it's not like we do anything crazy in the winery. We're just fermenting these wines, and they end up like Radiant is really black fruit, like I was saying, but then it ends up almost like getting very formal at the end. Like I always say, like throwing an ascot on it. Like it's very formal and elegant, refined, and structured, right? It starts out like this huge party. It's almost like, party in the back, cool with your friends, short in the front, cool with your folks. Radiant has that like incredible party of fruit, and then it gets really just not uptight, but like reserves. And that's what I love about that wine. And it makes sense if you step out there and you see where those grapes grow up. It's gnarly.
And that's going to be, I mean, pretty awesome for aging too, right? Because you're going to have this kind of like accessible part on the front that's going to be ready to go anytime you open that bottle. But you have this structure at the end that's going to make that party last for 20, 30 years, right?
Who knows? It's that's a fun conversation to have. When do you drink Santa Rita Hills Pinots? That's a fun one. I'm a big fan of the first 10 years, but I've also had some Babcock wines and some Brewer Clifton wines that have lasted. They probably will live forever. But Radiant has longevity. It can be a Vin de Garde. It's remarkable.
Yeah,
remarkable vineyard. The hardest vineyards to farm, the biggest struggle for the grapes, often produce the best wines. And I think in our collective group of vineyards that we have the pleasure of farming and shepherding, Radiant is the most difficult by miles.
Ruben, it's your most. Ruben, you've farmed, I mean, dozens and dozens, if not like more than 100 vineyards across Santa Barbara County at some point in your career. Is Radiant the most difficult out of all of them?
Yeah, it is by far.
By far.
Again, it's more difficult for the conditions of the weather, and it's what makes it more difficult is every year it's gonna be something different. Every year we're gonna deal with different conditions, but also that's what makes it more interesting there, because when our team working there these many years, we able to figure out the problems. We know if the back break is so uneven, we know that we're gonna have problems in the set. Like this year, everything grows really nice and beautiful. We think it was gonna be when little more fruit. So
don't say it. Don't say it.
Okay. But it's like it's gonna be challenging, and we don't know. Like last year, we talking early about what we can do. Like, we try some blocks, different things. We do other blocks and different things, and I think we stay on the process to see what recipe is we're gonna use every year, because I guarantee for Radiant, it's not gonna be the same recipe every year. And Matt talking about Jonara. Yeah, Jonara was not easy, but we know what we want now, like, because we've been doing for so many things. But also, Jonara take a few years to try different things and adjust it and all of that. Now we think it's easy, yeah, because we know the soil, the conditions there are a little bit better, but we will figure out Radiant. But as how I say, it's not gonna be same work every year. We just can adjust it every year in different conditions.
Right.
What I see.
I have this video that I think might work. Let's see. You can see this. This is wind at Radiant.
Oh, yeah. It sounds familiar.
Yeah, I could see that getting old after a while. You're muted, Matt.
You're muted.
Sorry. I still haven't figured out the Zoom thing after 14 months. Yeah, that bird, that video is amazing because that bird actually like picks up and flies away like Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz. But that was what, 30, 40 mile an hour winds, and that's not unusual. It's life, as per normal at the top of Radian. Yeah, I've never seen a vineyard like it, and I curse it more often than I embrace it because it presents headaches. But man, oh man, in the cellar, it's magical. And there's nothing.
Well, and before we sign off, tell us about the new winery. Tell us about what you're gonna have a tasting room there. Like, first of all, tell us about the winery. I was in there at various stages of development, and it's a great place to make wine. I mean, you helped develop it, right? So it better be.
Yeah, it better be. Yeah, it's a dream come true for us because it's built based on our struggles from our old facility, which the greatest wineries should be, right? You need to know what you want, what you don't want, as opposed to just kind of this dream out of nowhere, right? So we learned what we worked well with and what we didn't work well with, and we built this incredibly efficient winery, kind of built on fluidity and efficiency and safety and the kind of ability to focus on any given job without any outside interference. And so, yeah, it's our non-denominational cathedral. It's massive, and it's just awesome. It makes going to work every day great again, and it gives my team and I the ability to take the wines and grapes that Ruben and I grow, and our teams farm so well, and it allows us to express them even better than we could before. And we're building a tasting room, which should be done, knock wood, by mid-May, I hope. And man, it's just, it's been such a long time since we've been able to taste with people, and we're really looking forward to kind of getting back into being able to communicate again about the wines in person one of these days soon. But I mean, even Ruben and I, we've been seeing each other in the vineyard from a distance, and this whole thing is obviously so wild. But I'm excited to get back to a more intimate approach to tasting and talking about wine, because these vineyards, for example, I'm so passionate about them, and I wish there was an opportunity to do this more often. And I know, Ruben, you probably feel the same way, getting the word out about canonizing these properties. But yeah, I'm excited to get those 18s out into the world. Those are pretty wild wines, aren't they, Matt? Like those are.
They're tasty, man. Yeah, and they opened up quite a bit just in 30 minutes too.
Yeah.
Give them 3 days. Give the shards 2 weeks, and they'll really come out of their shells. It's like, yeah. But no, man, this is great. This is so much fun. And trying to think what else. Ruben, what else you got, man?
I mean, you've answered all my questions. Ruben, you got any more comments? I mean, what you guys going to plant more out there, or are you just kind of dialing what you do have? No,
I think there's 600 more plantable acres, Ruben. How about that?
I scared because I saw the hill between Reagan and Ben Rock this morning and say that it's gonna be one day when we plant in the hill, and I don't know when, but I think we experimental. We wanted to do it more, and if time's coming, and it's so much land there, so much. And how Matt say, if we plant another vineyard there, it's gonna be other 20 vineyards, not one, right? Because the soil, the property there is so amazing, so many different aspects, so many different variables that will make it, the wine better. So,
it's almost like its own little world within Santa Rita Hills, right?
Yeah.
It literally, it's like you're going to a different planet almost within the solar system of the Santa Rita Hills. Kevin, can I put you on the spot? Just because I'm interested?
Why not?
Because you taste more Santa Rita Hills wines than I do, for sure. What do you think the future grapes are of Santa Rita Hills in order of importance?
I mean, I think in the short term, it's going to be Pinot forever, right? I mean, or not forever, but for the short, long term, perhaps, because at
least for the Biden presidency.
Well, frankly, the market, the cost on Pinot is quite high, and people are going to grow it as long as people pay that price, right? And so you might see a little bit of sag in that in time, but it's not right now, So that's going to drive, at the end of the day, wine is a business, and people are going to keep growing stuff that pays more money, I think. So Pinot is going to be that for a while. But I've come to agree with you and others that, when it comes to fighting on the same platform with wines, let's say, I mean, white Burgundy is very arguably and would be argued by many as kind of the greatest wine in the world. And I think our Chardonnays from Santa Rita Hills approach that maybe more so than they approach red Burgundy, which is almost like something completely different, right? So there's a sameness to Chardonnay that can be compared globally, whereas you can't really do that with Pinot, I don't think. And so in that kind of realm where you can compare more or less apples to apples, our Chardonnay is gonna soar, I think. But and then I think Syrah. I love. I mean, Cool Climate Syrah. People who've watched this thing before are probably sick of me saying it, but I love Cool Climate Syrah more than anything. I think it's a more interesting wine than most anything I taste. And so the more we can get that out there, I think some Cool Climate Grenache done in interesting ways would be cool to see. I don't know. So I think some Rhones have potential. I've also been buying a lot of wines from around the world that are indigenous grapes from weird parts of Portugal and Spain. And that stuff is delicious and actually seems like it would do well in these regions, but you don't need any more of those, I don't think.
Careful.
Yeah.
Careful what you say, pal.
Yeah.
I think anything that comes in, though, should have high acid, right? It should be a naturally acidic grape.
Sure.
Well, and we've talked about that, too, just as far as climate change goes, as regions get slightly warmer, perhaps. And I think Santa Barbara is somewhat insulated from that because of the coastal influence being so heavy. But still, it's going to get a little bit warmer. And you're messing around with these grapes that are, higher acid grapes from Greece and can deal with more heat. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. We'll be dead by the time we see any results from that. Yeah, but it's interesting to see the steps being taken right now,
Yeah, it's fun.
I think you're totally right. It's going to move slowly, but I think Pinot is going to be strong in Santa Rita Hills for longer than be here.
For a long time, yeah. And I like the various styles of Pinot that are coming out, right? I mean, you have, fairly dense, opulent styles. You have very lean styles, and they're all delicious. So,
you can't argue with the Santa Rita Hills Pinot. It's exquisite. I just think over time, what's going to happen, I hope, is that certain sites where people are growing Pinot will realize they're better with Chard because the soils are deep or whatever's happening with Pinot doesn't work, but Chard would be heaven there. And I think over time, Pinot will be kind of pushed to certain boundaries and little specific parcels and aspects, and Chardonnay will kind of fill in between. And then I think maybe over time, Syrah finds sunnier little aspects, South California or places where it can soak up the sun and be protected. And it should be an organic, slow process that it'll be like 400 years from now.
Yeah, or maybe we'll all be drinking. We'll all be drinking Pico Lead or whatever you're growing, sweet wines.
No. If that happens, we're all in trouble. We're all in a lot of trouble if Pico Lead's the grape we are known for. But it's a fun conversation.
Yeah, cool, guys. Well, thank you very much. This is I think, the last one we're doing of these for a while, but the Santa Rita Hills Wine Alliance is doing more stuff. They have things coming up for the anniversary, the 20-year anniversary coming up at April 29th. They have one with the Pioneers talking about the drawing the lines of the AVA. May 6th, Sanford is hosting a talk about Sanford and Benedict Vineyard. Then there's stuff happening in May, later in May, and then June, July, August, September, and maybe one of these days we're going to have a in public or in-person event again too, which would be great. So, unless you guys got something more brilliant to say, I have
one thing.
Yeah.
I think with my scepter here, I think one of the tastings we should do that would be a ton of fun is Ruben's 50 favorite wines he's worked with.
From his cellar?
Yes, from Magnum. No, man, I think we should put Ruben on the spot and have him, maybe 50s, that's a little
50 is a lot. Yeah.
How about 200?
We can do it.
20. How about 25 wines? All the wines will be donated from the wineries because they're all local wineries. 25 most impactful for you personally, not your favorite, but memories and things that you learned about the region and what made you fall in love with it. 25 wines. Could we put it? Could we put it on the books?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And at least half of them have to be Pico Elite. No, but I'm serious. Let's do that. Put that on the books, Kevin. Let's do it.
All right, I'm down with that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you all for watching, for joining the Santa Rita Hills Wine Alliance again. We're all looking forward to hanging out and drinking in person again one of these days, and it seems to be coming. Everyone's getting their shots, and things are moving in that direction. So thank you all for tuning in, and nice to see you, Matt. Nice to see you, Ruben. Can't wait to see you guys in real life again. So take care.
Hey, thank you, guys.